All right, so last but not least of this RTP 101 is part 6. And some of these things are pretty horrific occurrences. There are some examples from here in New Hampshire. Again, we're just a small, mostly rural state, which is very similar to a lot of the places around the country. Some of these are more recent, some of them are a little bit older, but they can certainly happen to any of us. And I said last part that I work in a jail in Florida. I work at a Hillsborough County House of Corrections as a paramedic per diem. I do a couple shifts a month. And last month I was in the booking area where they might have 75 people in the booking process. It's not New Hampshire, small county House of Corrections. But one of the deputies came up to me and said, "Hey, that guy, and they pointed him out to me. Don't turn your back on him. He's behaving, so we're not going to lock him up behind glass right now. But about a year ago, he beat one of our deputies almost to death. So there are some bad people out there. And he was helping me to avoid any potential issue with this guy. So avoidance, again, big part. If you don't know the story of Carl Draga, we're going to go into it. And as horrific as Carl Draga is or was, this book scares me even more. Don't go buy this book because you're supporting this guy who lived in New Hampshire at the time he wrote it. They consider Carl Draga to be an American patriot, striking out against the system of oppression in the US. It sounds kind of like some of what we're seeing currently in different parts of the country, doesn't it? So Carl was shot and killed by police just over the border from New Hampshire and Bloomfield, Vermont. He had a long-term feud with government officials. Now, I kind of get that a little bit. I've had some issues where I have had some conflicts with my town selectmen, but we argued. I worked to vote him out of office, etc. Okay, he had some issues where there were zoning issues at his house. He had repaired some property of his that had been damaged by some flooding of the Connecticut River, and he didn't have the proper permits for it and all that. Anyways, so one day he gets pulled over. This officer sees him out. There's a I can't remember if there was a warrant on him at that point or not, but they pulled him over for probable cause. His truck was unregistered. And as he was approaching the vehicle or getting out of his cruiser, Carl opened fire. Now, this situation has been studied and is taught in police academies all over the world now. It was that much of an event and opened law enforcement eyes to some of these things that occur. So one of this first officers, he takes a round through the hand or the wrist and loses use of that hand. And as he's running for cover behind a tree, basically firing over his shoulder, trying to get some distance, Carl shoots him in the back. And in that book, that author states, and I quote, where Carl shot him in the back like the cowardly dog that he was, unquote. So Carl Draga by himself is bad enough. But these reactionary people who want to do this to our public safety people scare me even more, and who support it scare me even more. So Carl then gets in the cruiser and heads towards the county courthouse, town hall area, where there's a judge there, part-time judge that he's had it in for. She actually had gotten a pistol permit recently, but this one day did not have her gun with her because she was scared of Carl. and she'd been one of the select persons. And as she's running out the back door of this courthouse, because word has gotten to them that Carl shot officers and he's on the loose, and that they thought he was going there, she shoots her in the back and then takes off again. He ends up in Bloomfield in this field, basically in a bunker, is the way it's described, and he killed 4 people total: 2 New Hampshire troopers, the judge, and a bystander. Injured 2 more troopers and 1 border patrol agent. They basically had a hell of a shootout using long guns before they killed him. Now, Christopher Bernard Wilder, in April of 1984, was shot and killed in Colebrook, New Hampshire. What comes around goes around. History repeats itself. This is one of those creepy things where the parking lot that Christopher Wilder died in with his struggle with police is the same store where Drago was pulled over and where he shot the first officer. Little town of Colebrook, and this one store, what, 13 years apart, 14, 15 years apart, whatever it was, saw some pretty horrific violence. But anyways, this guy was known as a beauty queen killer. Nationwide, abducted and raped at least 12 women. The youngest 2 of them were 10 and 12 years old. They know he killed at least 8 of the 12 that he abducted and raped. So there was a nationwide APB out on him, and he was seen in Massachusetts moving up into Vermont. So they knew he was in the northern New England area, and they were on the lookout for him. This officer was trying to take him into custody, and they got into a struggle, and the Wilder was behind the officer, basically had him in a bear hug and was trying to get his weapon from him. And the officer shot Wilder through his own abdomen. He shot himself to kill Wilder because he knew he was going to die regardless. That takes some courage right there. Little old Colebrook, New Hampshire, right? Another death, another violent criminal. Franconia Police, 2007. Cody Miller's nephew. This was a very famous event. This is from the dash cam of Corporal McKay's cruiser. Corporal McKay and this young gentleman had a long history of disagreements, verbal and occasionally physical confrontations. And he pulled him over, nose to nose, cruiser to his car, for a motor vehicle event. And in the process, told him, show me your hands, show me your hands. He wouldn't show him his hands, so Corporal McKay pepper sprayed him. This is one shot from this. The whole scene is on this video cam, dash cam, and I'm not going to show you the rest of it, but shortly, a moment later, he turns to get away from the cloud of pepper spray, turns his back on the subject, whereon the young gentleman in the car pulls a .45 out from under his seat and fires and kills Corporal McKay. Now, excuse me about that. A bystander happens to see this going on. And as this fine young gentleman is leaving the scene, he actually runs over, after he shot Corporal McKay, he runs over the corporal, runs over his body and drives away, where he is then forced off the road by a bystander who then shoots and kills him. What bothers me almost more about this is the Union Leader, New Hampshire's premier newspaper, had an article about this and about the long-standing history between the two, and that Corporal McKay was wrong to pull him over. He should have had nothing to do with him because of this history, and basically that Corporal McKay was wrong. Corporal McKay was doing his job. You don't get to pick and choose who you pull over. And this was a kid. I mean, this was a young guy. So Franconia, another small scenic tourist town in the state of New Hampshire. Police officer dead. Another small scenic tourist town in the state of New Hampshire, Conway, New Hampshire. The Army Barracks is a Army Navy store. I was in this store about a week and a half earlier buying some blue BDUs for work. It was a carjacking gone wrong, apparently. This shooter ended up in the store where he shot the store manager and 2 customers. All 3 of them ended up dying. 2 of them were dead on scene, and one of the customers got flown to Maine Medical, where he died there. Small little tourist town, right? Rochester. Rochester is a unique city. It's got nice areas, it's got bad areas. Town of between 30 and 50,000, depending on who you talk to. The postmaster 10 years ago said he was delivering mail to 50,000 people. The census said this 30. Anyways, this young gentleman who had a handgun tucked down the front of his pants, under the age of 21. If I remember correctly, I think he was either 17 or 18. So carrying a concealed weapon underage, which is illegal, therefore he shouldn't have had it anyways. He and a buddy of his, who also had a handgun on him, decided they wanted to have a shootout in the foyer, the entryway to the grocery side of the Rochester Walmart, where he promptly shot himself in the abdomen trying to pull the weapon from his belt. This is his booking photo from the Foster's Daily Democrat. He's wearing a hospital robe because this was taken on Spalding 2 at Frisbee Hospital. So, also in Rochester, this is from the Foster's Daily Democrat. 1:45 in the morning, this homeowner was lying in bed, windows open because it was a nice fall night. Rochester Fair going on, and he heard some noise in his backyard. Looks outside, and there's a guy climbing up over the kind of the entryway roof over his back porch. He's just back from either Iraq or Afghanistan within the previous month. Thank God he was home. He takes his wife and daughter across the hallway, has his wife and daughter lock themselves in the bedroom and call 911. He stands with his back to that bedroom door with a .357. Man comes up through the window into his bedroom, master bedroom, comes into the hallway with something in his hand, whereon he shot him once in the chest, put 1 round right through his sternum. He's dead before he hit the floor. Home invasion, right? Here's the kind of weird thing about this. The guy was buck-ass naked, holding a can of axle grease in his hand. The police found his clothes spread over 2 blocks. To me now, it sounds a lot like what we call excited delirium now. These guys have a psychotic outbreak, usually triggered by some sort of a stimulant drug like cocaine, methamphetamines, bath salts, etc. And they go into a meta-hyperbolic status. And they get febrile like 105, 106, 107, and they start stripping their clothes off, and their brain is just now shut off to cognizant thought. And that's what it sounds like to me now. Luckily, the homeowner was not charged, and I hope he sleeps okay at night afterwards. I wouldn't want to have to go through this. Little old Rochester. And the guy was from Fremont, which is a very small town, about half an hour west of Rochester. Cape Vincent, New York is a small town of, I think it was 400 people is what I remember reading, up on the St. Lawrence River. And Mark Davis was a EMT in paramedic school, responded to a call for chest pain, and about 30 seconds after walking in the front door at about midnight, he was running across the front yard when he was shot in the back by a .30-06, died. The part of this story that really tore me up was the town of Cape Vincent put out a news thing saying that they had neither the location nor the financial resources or police resources for his funeral because they knew how many people were going to show up for this. Because we all know police, fire, EMS funerals, you get thousands of people. And they asked surrounding towns for assistance, both with law enforcement for traffic control. They asked for donations, and they asked for somebody to volunteer a place for his service. Yeah, kind of ugly. Mary survived her gunshot wound to the chest. Someday, this is her partner. Some days I still have dreams about it. You wake up to it, it's hard to fathom. We were just there to help somebody and it happened. It's unbelievable. Thank God she survived. Patrick in St. Louis, Missouri. So that was Kansas City, Missouri. This is St. Louis, Missouri. Both big cities, but he was hit by 2 bullets. He was driving an ambulance and a car pulled up beside him and fired rounds into the truck, apparently trying to kill their patient who they had already shot originally. This is one of the scenarios that have changed the way some of these big cities handle shootings now. You know, typically around here in New Hampshire, oh, police go in, they secure the scene, EMS comes in. You do your thing, and then you go to the hospital. What some of these big cities now are doing is they're sending a couple of police officers to secure that original scene momentarily. The ambulance pulls up, they literally throw the victim in the back of the ambulance, and they immediately drive to another location where there is a bigger police presence, where they have the scene locked down, and the bad guys don't know where they're going, you know, because it's over coded radio, you know, digital radio. And so they go there and it allows them a few moments to do some patient care, get the person on the stretcher, because these bad guys are coming back, finding out that EMS is working on them, and they're opening the back doors and shooting them again, and they're driving up beside them and shooting into the ambulance. So just because you're seen as secure, don't forget, keep your eyes open. Now, this is an interview with an EMT from here in New Hampshire. Very well-known EMT. Her husband was a very well-known EMS provider in the Manchester, Nashua area as well. And she and 2 partners were on an ambulance, and they get attacked by the female patient they were taking care of. So McEntee said that some of her injuries included ruptured discs in her neck, and cervical spine issues, broken hand, a serious bite wound to the elbow, and more. She's undergone 3 operations on her hand alone. And after her 3rd one in July, she's finally got some feelings back in her fingers. What happened was they put this patient in the truck, and unannounced, with no advance notice, she started out with a headbutt, and then started kicking, fighting, and biting. One of the partners, Briggs, took the headbutt to her jaw, which dislocated her jaw. She's still got reduced range of motion. She's had some surgeries on her arm that was broken in the process. And after a headbutt to her chest, she's had to have several cardiac procedures because she has some cardiac problems now, as probably electrical in nature, from the sternum blow, from a headbutt. So what bugs me more about this, I mean, these are awful injuries, but afterwards they tried to get a restraining order against her, and the judge said no. She was just off her meds that day. Great. Lancaster, New Hampshire. This guy struck several vehicles, eluded police, crashed his car. EMS was called. In the back of the truck, he assaulted an EMS worker and jumped from the truck. Where in New Hampshire, guy was a motor vehicle accident, walking around the vehicle in his underwear, became combative in the back of the truck, assaulted a female EMT, had to be tased. Bedford, New Hampshire, another small town in New Hampshire. Driver assaults a witness to the event, kicks an EMS worker, spits on officers after striking 5 vehicles. Now, in New Hampshire, we have what's called extended terms of imprisonment for assaulting emergency workers. If your state does not have this, I recommend it. Most of these, you know, you punch somebody and you assault them, it's typically a misdemeanor event. In New Hampshire now, if you strike, assault or battery in New Hampshire is unwelcome physical contact. If you spit on an EMT that's assault with extended terms of imprisonment. So 651 semicolon 6 gives you a better understanding of this whole thing. But 2 to 5 years for assaulting emergency workers. Now, the thing that sucks about this is nurses are not covered by this, and they should be. But for whatever reason, the New Hampshire House and Senate did not include them in it. Now, active shooter. Over the last, 20 years, we've had a bunch of school shootings, mall shootings, nightclub shootings. This was written in 2008 by, excuse me, Homeland Security, and in it, it says that for the most part, these shootings are over with before law enforcement can get to the scene. And you need to be prepared mentally and physically to defend yourself. The federal government is saying we can fight and we can defend ourselves, because by the time they get there, it's going to be over. So this is one that I recommend you read. Now, profiling an active shooter, somebody who's actively engaged in shooting people. There's usually no pattern or method. The pamphlet also says, shut your cell phone off. There'll be people making phone calls to 911. Don't overload the system. And if you're hiding, you're in an office, you're locked in an office under a desk with the lights off. If that bad guy is walking by your office and doesn't know you're there, he'll keep going. But if he hears your ringtone because somebody calls you to see if you're okay, now you're a target, okay? Typically, immediate deployment of law enforcement is required. However, they're usually over before that occurs. So again, it can be over within 10 to 15. Be prepared mentally and physically. So if you are on your own, you are out on your, your own, doing your own thing, and you happen to have a weapon, be prepared to use your weapon. If you don't, then be prepared to use anything you can. A lamp, a flag, the flag pole. Offices have flags, right? Some do, government offices especially. Chair legs, break a leg off a chair and be prepared to beat the guy with it, okay? So this was a lot, and a lot of violent stuff. So I like to end some of that with just a cute little puppy dog. And but don't be this puppy dog with your puppy dog eyes looking for everyone to give you treats. Enjoy life, have something to enjoy when you get home, but again, take care of yourself. So thank you for your time for this one. This is the end of the RTP 101.